detail that is a nuance but incredibly important was getting the language correct. And Josue, our Mayan dialect consultant, was huge in teaching Tenoch and Mabel and Alex, our Talcanil performers, how to get that accent correct in a way that was authentic. And it's hard for them because they're having to perform through two different language barriers, which is a real challenge. And Josue is a performer himself, and I think was sort of thrust in this position to ensure that the entirety of the production was honoring his culture correctly. And that's a hard position for anybody to have. And there was some, growing pains as far as like empowering him to really say like, oh, we got to go again because that was not pronounced correctly. Because those details, I think, for us who don't speak Mayan, probably feel less important. Although I do think you do get an authenticity in just knowing that it's being correct, but also thinking about this film playing in Mexico City and places where there's an indigenous Mayan culture, and knowing that to the best of our ability we are honoring that culture and that language was so important. Because making films like this that are about or homages to actual cultures like the Mayan culture, like the African cultures that Wakanda is built on, part of the responsibility as storytellers is getting that right. And so for me, that started with dialect. It goes through clothes and hair and production design, and Ruth and Camille and Hannah Binkler and Drew Petrada, our props master, asking the questions that are hard questions, that are time-consuming and tricky questions, but everybody being willing to go the extra mile to pay respects to the cultures we're representing, I think is incredibly important.
That was a great answer. I'd say from my point of view, I'll try to talk a little bit about the writing of it. The character of Shuri and her journey, and how she goes from anger and closing herself off to opening up and honoring the tradition of burning the clothing. Nate talked about trial and error. That journey, the trial and error of figuring out how to calibrate those moments, so that you feel like the story, her journey is a progression. Her journey with Ramonda is a progression of mother and daughter, so that when the tragedy does occur, the impact of it makes Shuri's turn to vengeance feel so earned. When she's with Killmonger, it feels earned, that you really wonder, is she going to make, which choice will she make, right? Like all of those beats along the way, you never quite know, and you're always trying to beat, especially with Nate over your shoulder, you're always trying to beat what you have. And so I think the details of the scenes and those relationships. Is that me? Speaker. Stop. That's them telling me to shut up.
No, we appreciate it.
Maybe one small little detail would just be like when the Queen is firing the general, and there's it's a room full of people, and you're so amazing in it. You're just she's amazing in it. And so we almost don't want to hear anything but you, first of all. But then there's just like a little bit of detail. It's a room, there's people in the room, the whole room is full, and you don't hear anybody else in the room. You almost don't even hear ambience or anything else in the room. Just a little bit of Foley detail from the general, just for being uncomfortable. And it's just very minor, just those two things. You can kind of feel, that the tension, building with just two simple, not very simple, but two things in the room, and your voice and that little bit of Foley, and that's all it needs really to kind of and stay out of the way as well. But it shows that there's so many people there. You can just the air is just sucked out. So just a small little thing.
I think one of the subtle details with the imagery, we work very closely with Autumn Durald-Arpapal, the cinematographer, and she was very determined to shoot this anamorphic and have it be very somber, and the imagery is very moody. And we took tremendous effort to map all of the lenses. So all of those characteristics that come from the old glass, this Panavision detuned lenses, those were all extracted meticulously, and then we created a lens tool that we shared across all of the different visual effects facilities across the globe that were working on that to try to lay those back over the top. So there's all of the flares, all of those things, and that's often done with visual effects, but I don't think it's ever been done necessarily to this level of detail, to really try to carry on the aesthetic that she wanted across the whole film. And I think that kind of helps, seamlessly blend the work across the whole show.
I think for the hair department, it was really about the Talakaniel. Like in the first one, it was all about Black culture. It was all about the tribes, and and being respectful. It was the same thing for me, as far as really respecting the Latin culture and Latin people, and knowing that this movie was going to play all around the world. It's just we wanted to make sure that we did it right, and making sure too that the hair looked good underwater. We had many meetings and many trials and things like that, and just getting that all like really dialed in. And I think the thing that Marvel does well is like even the actors that we brought in, that they're authentic. Even the background that you guys don't even know, they came in from Miami because those were the right people. So the attention to detail and getting the right people in the right place, that's why I love working for Marvel. This is my 7th Marvel movie. So that's what I love about the details are there, and as an artist, they give you everything that you need in order to create the movie in a beautiful way.
I would say from on the music standpoint, I think the way that the song "Lift Me Up" came together was extremely special. It's actually started out as the seed of it came from the first Black Panther movie, when you see when you see T'Challa and Chadwick go to Ancestral Plane, and you hear this little riff played on this African instrument called the kora. It's like an African harp, and I always thought I always loved it, and I wanted to do something more with that. So when I went to Mexico to record for Wakanda Forever, I brought that little thing, those chord changes in that instrument with me, and played it for Mexican musicians. And they brought out their instruments, the Mexican harp, the harangas, and the guitarrón, and played over that. And I just thought that mix of those two cultures was really special. And I asked Brian if he would feel comfortable to write a couple of verses for it, some lyrics for it. And he wrote this beautiful lyrics, which we all know is the chorus. And then we went to Nigeria together and had our first session with an incredible singer named Thames. And she recorded a beautiful verse, and then came back to LA. And we had actually approached Rihanna a long time ago, but she was gonna have a kid, and she hasn't done music in 6 years, so we thought the chances were pretty slim, but we were able to show her an early rough cut of the movie, and she heard that very first rough demo in it, and she really connected with the story, and we started collaborating on the song, and the rest is history.
For costumes, I think it was building these worlds and getting it right. And there's the historic anchor of the film that is the Mayan culture when you see the flashbacks, and luckily we shot that later on as we started to learn more and more about Mayan culture and this little community that wasn't like the Aztecs, which was much bigger and much more documented. So the layers and keeping a balance of just like Wakanda was for the African culture and the tribes, I really wanted the Tola Canil to have that inspiration from true Mayan historic elements, as well as what was underwater. And we talked to oceanographers, we talked to people who knew that there were a lot of bones down there and coral, and those were the elements that we could use to make these costumes. And also the storytelling element had to be maintained. So there were nuances like one sleeve, one shoulder exposed. Ramonda's gray vibranium dress, she sits on the throne. It's the same gray as the throne. She has one shoulder exposed, which shows her to be vulnerable as well as beautiful and strong. We see Shuri enter the lab in a gray plaid dress with one arm out. We see the Dora Milaje carry the casket with their exposed arm. And all of these, this skin, the strength, the beauty, the vulnerability, the layers, the complication of that, for me, was my bit of my through line to show that the women were taking on Wakanda. As we see Ramonda coming into the UN in the opening scene, that dress was actually planned for another place. And Nate and Ryan saw the sketch, and they were like, let's have her come into the UN event, which is not something you would typically think of. And I scratched my head for about 2 seconds. And then I was like, wow, when she enters that way, just like the first film, when we see her on the landing pad and she has on this shoulder mantle and this beautiful headdress, you know who the queen is. And in this film, when she enters, you know who the ruler is. And that's what I think with the decision that we made collectively to put her in an outfit like that was truly a collaboration of filmmakers and storytellers.
Absolutely, Nashville. All of those elements were just so powerful and so helpful to me, Angela, the actor. As Ramonda, it was just to, hold the space in whatever way I held my body, whether it's, feeling myself in the gray vibranium, sitting upon the throne, one arm exposed. How do you hold this space with strength and the authority? So it's finding those postures and being confident in them. Is Angela the actor, working with other actors, it was always just every day on this set knowing what we were attempting to do, what we had done with, new actors with us, whether it was, Tenoch, and with the Herculean task of the languages that he and his colleagues had to, he would emerge from the water and the hair would be going east, west, and I might just do something like that. It was off camera, whatever way I could, serve, this newbie. And I think and with gentleness, he would, I know he would work with Beth, and everyone's in his ear, he's got the Mayan, he's got the English, and I remember he would say pristine. And I've taken Spanish. I know he means, and I read the script as pristine. And I know when you say you go pristine, you speak Spanish yourself, so I would just, whatever, pristine. Trying to help him put the accent for the English words. But with a great confidence that he, was just doing a marvelous job. I'm so proud to be in the scenes with him. And also with Shuri, my daughter, we many scenes together, but also she had such a mantle that she was carrying. So always to, whether we're in the scene or before or after the scene, just pumping her up as a mother would. So, yeah.
Well,